Welcome to the Real News Network. I'm Sharmini Peres coming to you from Baltimore. The relations have strained between Washington and Ankara over the airdropping of weapons, ammunition, and reinforcements to the Syrian Kurds in Kobani. Further, Turkish president says U.S. weapons airdropped on Kobani was wrong because some of the weapons they dropped from C-130 jets were seized by the IS. The Pentagon, on the other hand, on Tuesday said that the vast majority of the U.S. supplies dropped on Sunday had reached the Kurdish fighters, despite an online video showing Islamic State militants with a bundle of what was airdropped. Here to shed some light on the recent development is Baris Karaagac. He is a lecturer in international development studies at Trent University in Ontario, Canada, and he's now coming to us from Toronto. Thank you for joining us, Baris.
Thanks for having me, Sharmini.
Baris, is there a growing tension between Washington and Ankara?
Yes, there is a growing tension, and there's quite a frustration on the part of Americans regarding Turkey's reluctance to assist the resistance in Kobani. Since the beginning, actually, and it's been 40 days since ISIS laid siege on the town, and there's been heavy fighting there, and many people were actually expecting it to fall much sooner, but the resistance fighters have been able to fend the ISIS militants off the city so far. And Turkey seemed to have, or seemed to first expect the city to fall, but even worse than this, despite all this, manifestations of solidarity and acts of solidarity from the international community for the resistance there, Turkey actually seemed to want Kobani to fall, but it hasn't happened so far. During this time, and again, we have to try to picture that siege. The city has been under siege from three directions: from the south, from the west, and the east. And in the north, there's the Turkish border. The Turkish state closed the border since the beginning of the fighting. And the Kurds have not been able to receive any assistance, including the other Kurdish cities in the region or from any part of the world since that time. And when we look at the American side, when the fighting began, Americans said, we're not so interested or concerned about Kobani. Our main focus is the Assad regime. But this has changed significantly in the past couple of weeks, when there was a lot of concern at the international level and support for the resistance in Kobani. And again, Americans do not want ISIS to become a major political and military force in the region, a force that they cannot control. And then Americans decided to intervene. But again, Turkey was quite reluctant. But at the end, Kerry basically said, well, regardless of what the Turkish state thinks or wants, we will intervene. We will participate in the assistance of, or delivering assistance to the fighters in Kobani against ISIS. And then equipment that was received from Iraqi Kurds was delivered by Americans last Sunday. But the reason why Turkish president is so against this help, this aid, and or the participation of Turkey in the assistance of the Kurdish rebels, mostly Kurdish rebels in Kobani, is that Turkey does not want to see these semi-autonomous cantons on its border to survive. And interestingly, since the beginning of the fighting, but particularly since the in the past couple of weeks, there was also a discursive change in Turkey. The discourse that has been adopted by both the president and the prime minister Davutoglu, that they started to refer to they started to emphasize that the PKK and its offshoot or affiliate in Syrian Kurdistan, the PYD, are terrorist organizations. Why is this important? It is important because since since December 2012, there was a so-called peace process or a solution process that had been negotiated by the Kurdish movement and the Turkish state. And since March 2013, there had been a ceasefire between the Kurdish insurgents and Turkish military. And during this time, uh, uh, the top leaders within the AKP actually refrained from referring to the PKK as a terrorist organization. Turkey still considers the PKK as a terrorist organization, but so do many other political bodies and and many states around the world, including the U.S., the EU, and NATO, and Australia, etc. But this changed immediately in the past couple of weeks. For Erdogan, there is no difference between ISIS and the PYD and the PKK.
And why is that, Baris? Explain to us the different threads between them.
Well, the PKK, as many of you know, fought a 30-year war against the Turkish state. And during this period, about 40,000 people have lost their lives. Actually, among those 40,000, 5,000 were Syrian Kurds who have very close ties to the Kurds in Turkey. And at the end of this war, in 2012, as I said, the AKP wanted to start this peace process to stop the fighting in the east and west, in the southeastern parts of Turkey. The PYD is an affiliate of the PKK in Kurdish, in Syrian Kurdistan. What is so unique, interesting about what these people and this political group, this political party, have been doing in the northern part of Syria is that they try to implement a new social form of organization, which is completely unique in the Middle East.
Here,
So
Baris, hold on. Here you're trying to now describe the Kurdish leadership and what they're doing in the city of Kobani, and this is why Kobani is so important?
Yes, not only in Kobani, but there are two other cities or cantons, as they refer to them, in northern Syria. One of them is Afrin, and the other one is Jazira. And these are semi-autonomous cantons, as the PYD and its allies refer to them. And this new social form of organization that they're trying to, or they've tried to implement, and this is a very recent process since they took over from the Syrian forces in the area in 2012. It's based on grassroots democracy. It's based on gender equality. When you look at the fighters in northern Syria, actually 35% of them fighting against ISIS are women. And this social form of organization is based on local autonomy and sustainable ecology. This is a very, very unique experiment. And I think many people who see themselves on the left of the political spectrum around the world would be really interested in taking a look at this experiment. So this is one of the reasons, the uniqueness and the specificity of this social experiment in this area is one of the reasons why ISIS attacked Kobani. And this is, again, one of the reasons why Erdogan and his cronies want Kobani to fall. Because within Turkey, the Kurdish movement, especially in the last few years, is the most organized and most potent, most powerful opposition. But again, of course, because of this peace process, they've been cornered by the PKK, by the Turkish government, and there's little moving space for them. But still, they are the most important opposition with an alternative, a counter-hegemonic project in the region. And this applies to the PYD and its allies in those three semi-autonomous cantons in northern Syria.
Besides what you just described in terms of the political mission and the agenda and the nature of the organizing, why else is it a threat to Turkey?
Well, the Turkish state in general, and the AKP in particular, I think are quite concerned about losing their grip, control over the Kurdish-dominated areas, predominantly Kurdish areas, on their borders and again within Turkey itself. So this is a threat to the ruling party in Turkey. And the Kurds, even within Turkey, have tried to implement some of the policies that they've been advocating. This again, we talked about gender equality, we talked about local autonomy, etc., within the framework of democratic confederalism. And this is a real threat to the hegemony of the AKP. But an interesting point is that despite its opposition to the resistance in Kobani, or the assistance to the resistance in Kobani, and despite this aggressive attitude towards Kurds, actually the AKP's policies have backfired, because the AKP has tried to implement what many critics have referred to as a neo-Ottoman foreign policy in the region. That means the AKP wanted to increase the influence of the Turkish state over the predominantly Sunni areas that used to be under Ottoman control in the Middle East. But when we look at today, it is so clear that Turkey has been isolated. It's been isolated even by its allies during the Syrian civil war, which includes countries like Qatar and Saudi Arabia, etc. And we can see this in the voting last week in the UN Security Council, the vote that Turkey lost.
And explain that a bit more. What was the vote that Turkey lost?
Turkey wants to become a member of the temporary member of the Security Council, but it didn't get the votes it was expecting, particularly from its allies.
Baris, explain to us the different Kurdish groups and the convergence that's going on in Kobani among them right now.
Okay. So there are two major groups right now in Turkey, Syria, and Iraq. In Iraq, the dominant one is the KDP, led by Barzani. And in Turkish Kurdistan and Syrian Kurdistan, it's the PKK and its affiliate PYD. And historically, there are deep political and ideological divisions between these groups. But the attack on ISIS and Turkey's stance on the fighting in that area have led to or seem to lead to significant cooperation between these various Kurdish groups in the area. Actually, yesterday there was an agreement that was reached between PYD and its three allies from Iraq, from Syrian Kurdistan, and the ENKS, which is an affiliate of the Iraqi Kurdish KDP. And they agreed to establishing a political council. And Salih Muslim, the leader of the PYD in Syria, has said this was a big success for the Kurds in the region because it's a step towards Kurdish unity. And I'm sure this is one of the things that will worry the Turkish administration in Ankara significantly. And one more important thing is that now, mostly because of American insistence and pressure on Turkey, Turkey has recently agreed to the transfer of 200 Iraqi Peshmergas to Kobani through a corridor on Turkish-Syrian border, but on the Turkish side. So these will be all Iraqi Kurds from a region whose dialect and culture are quite close to those of Syrian Kurds. And again, this is a big, I think, compromise on the part of the Turkish state, but it was a result of significant international pressure, but particularly American pressure.
Baris, thank you so much for joining us today and explaining all of this.
Oh, thank you.
And thank you for joining us on the Real News Network.